Hi friends and welcome back to the channel. I am Jen and thank you so much for joining me today. I am wrapping up, I think this and one other project I want to do for my Frosty Waterfalls January bag, and we're going to make my version of icicles. Kind of goes in theme if you receive January sparkle bag. I think this kind of goes in theme, and I was thinking of something like, how can I put together some sort of icicle situation? And that's what we're getting into. So thank you so much for joining today, friends. And we are not going to be using much, just a few findings and really wire. That's all we're into today is some craft wire. So if you're interested in putting something like this together, stay tuned because that's what we're jumping into. And that's it. So let's jump into it. Let me pull you down to the mat and show you what I've got going on. So what I am going to do is I am going to make one more of each of my components here with you. So these guys here are all our icicles. And we'll have one center in the drop. One center drop in the center, and then we'll put two on either side, and then we will do two smaller with just three of the beads. We'll do two on each side with the three beads, and we're gonna do double chain. So that's what I'm up to. So let's get to it. First and foremost, let's go ahead and complete our components. Okay, and let me push you down. And so now we're going to just grab three beads for this one. And I'm just going to grab a small piece of my wire. And to make this little guy right here, we don't need much. And so I'm going to cut off about that much. It's probably about 4 or 5 inches, something like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bottom bead and feed it through my wire. And I am going to just use this portion to wrap and do our loop at the top. So we don't need much for that. We need more to do our wraps on the bottom here. And so I'm just going to leave just kind of like, oh, I don't know, what is that? Maybe 1.5 inches on the top, and I have the majority of my wire at the bottom. And now I'm just going to feed on my 3 beads, kind of holding it in place there at that section of my wire. Okay. And now I'm just going to take this bottom wire and I'm just going to lift it up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold, you kind of almost have to hold all 3 of your beads. And I'm just going to take and wrap this wire kind of around. And it's going to push your beads up. So you kind of just hold it in place. And so I've got that. And I'm going to come up again. See how it's wanting to pop up my little teeny tot there. And so that's okay. I can even put it in the center. I can put it through. It doesn't matter. And that's it. There's no right or wrong here. And that's what we've got. And now what I'm going to do with this wire here is I am going to take it. I'm going to push this bead down. And I am going to just go around literally really, really tight. And I'm just going to do one full rotation wrap on the top there. Just like that. And again, there's no right or wrong. Just wrap it around, and it's going to look kind of, might look a little funky and weird, but this is really malleable, so we'll just kind of straighten it out, and then we can push this down, and we're good. So now I will trim off this longer wire, and then I'm just going to make a small, simple loop. Let me tuck that in there. I'm just going to make a small, simple loop on the top. And so pull that forward, and then we're going to wrap that around. And none of them have to be exact. None of mine are exact. It's really cool. It's going to look kind of like it's like going to be called my icicle necklace. But none of your components have to be exact. You can kind of be organic with it, and just let the wire go where the wire wants to go. I think it's kind of a cool look. And you could also have taken, and done multiple swirls around. Just something fun, but really, really easy. And we'll tuck that in. And so there is now that component. So now these are my 4 components, and as you can see, none look the same. They're a little bit different. And so those are done. Now let's go over here to this guy. Now, same thing. None of these are exact either, except for my count of my beads. Okay? But all my reps on the bottom, they're all different. Okay? They're not exact. It doesn't have to be. Okay? But they are generally about the same length. Okay, and so let's get this one going. So what we're going to do to get here is we're going to use a generous piece of wire. So I'll play it for a second. I am going to take a nice piece of wire off my spool, and I'm going to straighten that out. Okay, and I didn't do measurements. It's kind of like an eyeballing thing. But I'm just going to get a nice generous amount here. So this is probably a ruler length if I had to guess. Okay, and then we will cut that off. And so now I've got this ruler length. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and put my teardrop bead through my wire. And same thing, I want a long piece of my wire to create this wrap down here on the bottom. But then I need, you know, about 1.5 inches worth of the stem, maybe almost 2 inches to feed my beads and complete my wire wrap loop. Excuse me, guys. And pull these wires straight up. Okay, so that's what we have. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be working with this long wire, and I'm going to hold my teardrop, and I am going to wrap this around, and see, it's going to want to move on you, but it's actually really quite easy. I'm going to do as tight of a wrap right there as I can. Okay, so I've got one wrap. Now what I'm going to do, and until you establish your wraps, it's a little finicky, but I'm just going to begin to do and lay clean wraps one below the other. And push it back into place, kind of tighten that up there. And I'm just going to keep going around, and I'm just laying these wraps cleanly, one on top of the other, and I'm working down. And now you could do this messy, you could literally do this however you want. I just thought it'd be cool look. So that's what I've got, and you can make these wraps go down as far on your bead that you want. And as you can see, every couple of wraps, I'm just kind of tightening them up there. Okay, and again, I have a small little gap right there, but again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so this is where you can determine, let's pull the rest of mine in, you know, how far down you want your wraps. None of mine are the same. So that's just a design aesthetic. So maybe we'll go around maybe 1, 2. Take a look at that. I think that looks pretty cool. And then I'm just going to turn it around to the back. And I'm going to go ahead and trim that off. And these, this wire with these teardrops, with because we're kind of halfway down the bead, they're flat. And so my wire is literally laying flat that I just cut right on my rainbow teardrop. But if you want to grab your chain nose and grab that wire and tuck it underneath the others, you can do that too. Okay, so my wraps are pretty tight, so I'm not worried about it. Okay, and now I'm just going to put on my beads, which I did back and forth, just simple little situation. So I did the smoke white and the opalite, so went back and forth to that. Smoke white, opalite, and I think I used 4 of each. Feeding those on there. And then, is that it? looks like I've got one more, so let's see here. Yeah, so we used 1, 2, 3, 4 of the smoke white and 3 of the opalites. And then we're going to be using one of the bicones here on the top, the clear 6mm bicones, and then one of our teeny tots. And then we'll just make a simple loop, simple wire wrap loop at the top here to close this up. And I am making sure that my loop is going the same direction as my component. So my loop is facing towards me, same direction. So we'll just put our pliers right tight, right above that. I'm going to turn that to the side. So my loop will be the same direction. I'll pull that up and around. And we'll straighten that up. And then we'll wrap that around. And trim. Really fun. Very, very simple little project. Thought it'd be fun to get some of these beautiful beads from that bag that are so stunning, like almost like a crystalline, like in a, like an icicle situation. But not necessarily a winter necklace though. I think it just looks kind of cool. And so that's what I've got, guys. That's what you've got. Okay, and let me pull you up. Now what I did is, and again, I didn't do any measurements, but I did grab some of my 2.5mm curb chain, and I just have a piece of scrap wire here, all right? And that is what I like to do. And I put the first piece around my neck and then cut it to where I want that to drop. So you can make this any length you want. Okay, and so then what I did was I grabbed, so I've got that, both of my pieces of chain, the last link fed on my scrap wire here. And so now what I'll do is I will go ahead and we will determine, I will just pull this flat and then we know we have the exact same length. And I'll cut it at the exact length of the other one there. Wire. I'm going to feed the last link on both so I can get my center. And so I'm just going to put that, drop that link on there. And then the outer strand, I'm going to find the last link here and feed that on my wire. And now I've got all of my links here. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and we're going to lay this flat on the mat. And I know some of it's going to be off camera here, but we're going to lay it flat so that I can find my center. Okay, so my center is going to be right here. Okay, so that's good. So I know I'm centered now. Now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put this over the closed part, and now I'm coming down here where I've got my open links. And so now I know I'm centered and I've got my 4 links. Now what I am going to do is I am going to keep those on there until I can get a jump ring open. And I am going to grab a couple pair of chain nose here, and I'm going to grab this closed toggle, or excuse me, jump ring. And so I'm going to open that up pretty good. So I've got enough room here. I think this is going to work. These are a little thick, but I think we're going to work it out. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to grab the last link of each piece of chain. So I'm starting with my outer chain here, and we'll get this all fed on the jump ring. So there's the outer and then the inner strand. And then I am going to feed on my closed jump ring. And then on the other side of my jump ring, I am going to feed on, let me find, this is the centerpiece, so this will be my centerpiece. And I'll grab that link and I'm going to feed it on that jump ring on this side of the toggle, on the right side of the toggle. So the toggle is going to be in between the closed jump ring. And then my outer piece. And you don't have to do it like this. This is just so that they don't twist, but they'll twist anyway. You can even intentionally twist them. Okay, and so then I'm just go ahead and close that up. And let's get that nice and close. And again, I'm using the ovals just so that, you know, this curved chain is so small. I really just want to make sure that I'm lessening areas of weakness, weak points on my necklace. So that's what we have there, right? So now that's what that looks like. Okay, and now I have this closed rope jump ring, and I am going to grab another oval, and we will put on one of our icicles, and then we will feed that right on there. And then we'll kind of take a look at it and see where the other ones need to be placed. And so, and you could even just, I mean, this is kind of a cool look with minimalist being in this year, obviously. Just a cool look right there. You've got your double chain, and, you know, you just have this simple drop. That's really quite pretty, frankly. So, you know, you could leave it at that, right? So nothing wrong with that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and lay this out and see, you know, pretty much try to just keep it, we know we're at the center here. And then what I'm going to do is my idea was to have my icicles dropping kind of like that on either side. And then we can put up here a small one. And then I can put this one up here. And then we've got the small ones here. And then maybe one here. Or we could go with two of the small ones here. It's just a total design aesthetic. This is where I'm kind of going with it. So I thought, okay, let's grab some craft wire and make some icicles. And I'm thinking, you know, how sometimes you're designing in your head and you're so glad when it kind of comes out the way you envisioned it. So that's what I'm hoping for here. So I'm just going to put on a jump ring. But I think what I'm going to do is, now we don't want to get it on the outside of the chain because then it'll slide. We want to put it in the links of the chain. And so I'm kind of thinking, you know, it doesn't have to be exact or perfect, but let me grab like around where we just were. So that would be a link here. Another reason I used the ovals here is because they should go through this chain. Well, they should. And then we'll pop one of these guys on, close that up. And there's the first one. And so let's see here what we've got. Looks so cool. That is so cool. And that's how that'll hang. And so now, you know, I don't want to really be exacto. We don't need the teeny tots, which makes life just a little more slowed down in the jewelry making, but that's okay. We need what we need. That's why we have a gazillion and one options in the findings. You never know. So I'm going to open that nice and wide, and I'm going to see where I am here. So I'm almost going to go, to tell you the truth, you know, almost going to go just a smidge below it. So I'm feeling like I'm going to go about right here. We'll not have them even. We'll do a little, we'll have a little asymmetrical situation going on here. And so there we go. And now I'm going to put it this way, and I'm going to pull my center down there so that I can see where I need to cut for my clasp. And it's going to be right there. So, and then what I was going to do here is I was going to use another one of our larger with just a couple of ovals. And that'll be our closure. So I'm just going to put an oval through here. And then I am going to grab my chain. So we'll do one side at a time. So we'll put that piece on there. And then this one. And then that closed jump ring. And close that up. And on the other side, we will do the same thing with the lobster closure. You could also extend your length on something like this, guys, and make it slip over the head. You do not need a closure on a necklace like this. You could absolutely have this to slip over the head for sure. I love long necklaces anyway, so I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for sticking with me with patience here as we were dealing with that little micro 2.5 millimeter chain. And there we go. And now that will go there. And here we go, friends. And I hope you guys can see and tell how beautiful that is. That's what we've got. And that's what that looks like. So, so, so beautiful. So, so gorgeous. And you really, again, guys, something like this, you can eyeball it. You really do not have to do measurements. But I think that looks literally like an icicle necklace. I hope you guys enjoyed, and thanks so much for joining me. And you guys have an awesome, great day. Be blessed.